Okay, today we're going to talk about how to calibrate this benchtop pH meter, but first we're going to go over some of the supplies that we need to get started. We need a waste beaker, a rinse waste beaker, or a bottle. You can also do this over the sink, but I don't have a sink here, so I'm using this beaker. You're going to need a pH 4 solution and a pH 7 solution. These are buffer solutions, they're already set. And you're going to need two 50 ml beakers. And these are for the pH 4 and pH 7 solution. I've already labeled them and poured about 25 or 35 mLs of buffer solution in each of them. You're going to need DI water for rinsing, and you're going to need Chem wipes. Okay, let's get started. First thing you're going to do is push the power button. It's the red circle with the line through it. Hold that down for a second. And you're going to see some numbers up here. That's the pH reading that the probe is actually reading from the solution that's inside this cap. And as you can see, it's not 7.0, and that should always say 7.0 when you first turn it on, because the solution that this probe is kept in should always be a pH 7 buffer solution. So we're going to do some troubleshooting and see if we need to actually calibrate this pH meter, or if the solution in here is just not a pH 7 buffer, which is also possible. Sometimes that can happen because students who use this pH meter before you do not rinse and put pH 7 buffer into the cap correctly after they use it, and that messes up the pH reading that you see initially. So we're going to do some troubleshooting. First thing we're going to do is we're going to hold the top part of the cap tightly and then unscrew the bottom part. And the solution that's in there, we're going to dump that out in our waste beaker. We're going to rinse the cap out with DI water. Set that down for a second. And then we're going to rinse the probe with DI water. That way, if it's contaminated any type of way, it's going to get all that good stuff off. Alright, shake it a little bit. We're going to take a Chem wipe and gently dab around the outside of the probe. Do never jam this on the inside of it, just dap around the outside. Dry up some of that extra DI water. And after we do that, we're going to take our pH 7 buffer, which I've already poured in this 50 ml beaker, and we're going to put our probe into the beaker. You can do this by holding it in there with your hand or pushing it down inside like this. And there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can swirl the beaker around and make sure you don't hit the sides of the pH probe with the beaker. You should never hear a clanking sound or a clicking sound or anything like that. You just want to make sure that the probe touches the solution only. Or you could take it off of this arm and you can swirl it around. Alright, now we can see here it's reading a 7.01, 7.02. So we're going to go ahead and calibrate this. Even though that's very close, probably doesn't need to be calibrated, we're going to go ahead and do that anyway. So we clip it back on here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to push the set button for just a few seconds. Again, we're going to hold it down. Okay, and this is going to go to a mode where we can change the settings. So we're going to use either the up or the down arrow, and we're going to find the mode that says BUF. So I just pushed it 3 times in the up direction, the up arrow, and it says BUF. That's the buffer. That's how we check and make sure our buffers are set correctly. After you've done that, you're going to push the enter button. It has a little curved arrow on the top part of the button, and it says MN/MX on the bottom part of the button. So we're going to hit that, and there's 2 different settings you can choose. You can choose what it's on now, which is CUST, that's what we want, that's a custom setting, or you can choose NIST, and basically what that is just a determination between 2 different types of buffers. We don't have an NIST buffer, so we're going to leave it on the custom mode. So it should say CUST, and after we have that, we're going to push that enter button again, and it should go back to saying BUF. Okay, so once we've done that, we can push the escape button. It says ESC on the bottom, a line above it, and then CAL. So we're just going to push that one time, and that's going to bring us back out to our main screen. Okay, so once we're at that point, it's time to start calibrating. We're going to push the same button again we just used to escape. That's also the calibrate button. So we're going to push that one time. You should say CAL flashing across your screen. That's now in calibrate mode. The first thing we're going to do, rinse the electrode, the pH probe, rinse it real good. Shake it a little bit, get that excess water off, and pat it down around the outside with the Kim wipe. Alright, and once we've done that, the first solution we're going to use is a pH 4 solution. Usually when you're calibrating, you have to have two different pHs, so the machine has something to compare it against. So we're going to go ahead and put it in this pH 4 solution. If this cap is too low, which I think it is right now, you can just slide it up a little bit. Alright. And we're going to put this inside, and again you can hold it in and swirl it around, or you can do what I'm going to do here. You can take it off and swirl it around. So you should see a pH reading on the screen. Right now it's pretty close to 4. It's jumping around a little bit. And on the bottom, underneath that big number, you're going to see a smaller number. Right now it says 2.0. So that is actually what we're trying to calibrate it to. And since we're using a pH 4 solution, we need to set that to pH 4. So we do that by pushing the HLD/REC button. That's that middle one here on the bottom. So we're going to push that, and it just changed that number to 4.50 from 2.00. Now we're using a 4.0, so we're going to have to change that number now. We're going to do that by pressing the down arrow with this button right here, and we're going to hold it until that number goes down to 4.0. Alright, 4.0. Alright. Now, once we're on 4.0, I'm going to swirl around the electrode in the solution until you see the word ready at the top corner of the screen here. And once you see that, that tells you that that's actually what the pH meter is reading, and we can now calibrate it. We do that by pushing the enter button. So right now it's calibrating to pH 4. Okay, so we're calibrated to pH 4. Perfect. Alright, so clip that back on. Set your pH 4 solution aside. We're going to rinse the electrode again. With DI water. We can use the same Kim wipe. I'm going to pat it down. Get all that excess DI water off of it. And we're still in calibration mode. We haven't changed anything. So now we're going to use our pH 7 solution. So again, I'm going to do that by this method and take it off and swirl it around gently. Remember, not touching any of the glass on the sides. And I'm going to push the hold button again at the bottom in the middle to change the small number to 7.0, because that's the solution we're using right now. It says 4.0 now because that's what we left it on when we were calibrating with the pH 4 solution. So I'm going to push that, and then that says 7.0 now, so that's good. So I'm going to swirl this around until I see the word ready on the screen. It says ready, so that means I can go ahead and push enter. And now that's calibrating to pH 7 buffer. Perfect. So once we've done that, you still have the cal flashing on the screen. Go ahead and clip this back on your arm if you've taken it off. And you're going to push the escape button, which is the same as the calibrate button. So you push that, and that's going to go back to your regular mode of measuring pH. Now, you can go ahead and use this after you've rinsed it with DI water and patted it dry. You can go ahead and use this to measure the pH of the solution you're using for your experiment. Or in my case, I'm going to be putting this away, so I'm going to store it. And this is exactly what you should do at the end of your experiment. So we're going to go through that. So we have this cap here. Remember earlier we emptied it out, rinsed it with DI water, and it's dried a little bit. So now we're going to put some pH solution inside that, pH 7 solution. Just going to pour some inside. About halfway is good. If you get too much in there, like I just did, pour it into the waste, you're never going to pour it back into your container that you got it out of. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to rinse the electrode. Now remember, this is what you do after your experiment. That way the next student that uses the benchtop meter after you gets a pH meter that's correct. And again, we're going to dab it dry with the Chem wipe. Alright, once you've done that, and go ahead and slide this back down. Remember, I slid this up earlier. So you should have about an inch or an inch and a half there of electrode below this screw cap here. And remember, never take this off. Alright, so I'm going to put this back by sliding it up. And then I'm just going to twist it, that cap with the pH 7 buffer in it, and there we go. It's reading 6.98, not 7.0, but again, that's okay. It'll probably say 7.0 at some point. There you go. So here we are. We have a calibrated pH meter. It's ready to use now, or it's ready to store, which is my case. So go ahead and turn that off by pushing the power button. And there you go. That's how we calibrate a pH meter.